So we do really appreciate of your presence here at the ASEAN Investment Forum. As we informed you earlier that there will be 5 different topics to be discussed today, and we've gone through the first topic, and next is the second topic, and after the lunch break we will be delving deeper into investment opportunities in electric vehicles, in renewable energy, and in health systems.
Yes, and the next session will be talking about global supply chain and sustainable investments. And there are also going to be prominent panelists and moderated by Ms. Judith Ho.
Thank you so much, Minister Bahlil Lahadalia. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise to appreciate Mr. Bahlil and also all the ministers and the Secretary General of ASEAN. Thank you very much for attending this morning session. Boleh kita beri aplaus yang meriah sekali lagi untuk Pak Bahlil, untuk Sekjen ASEAN, dan juga untuk Menteri-Menteri Investasi dan Ekonomi negara-negara ASEAN.
Iya.
Baik, kami persilakan untuk duduk kembali Bapak Ibu. Terima kasih atas kerjasamanya.
Kita akan langsung menyambung acara dengan sesi berikutnya, yaitu sesi kedua.
And let us begin the session.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I am here again today, excited to speak to our panelists today about supply chain. I would like to invite onto the stage His Excellency Alfredo E. Pascual, Minister of Trade and Industry for the Philippines. We also have Mr. Nguyen Antoine, Deputy Director General at the Foreign Investment Agency at the Ministry of Planning and Investment for Vietnam, and also Ms. Lily Yan Ing at the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. May I just invite once again His Excellency Alfredo E. Pascual, Minister of Trade and Industry for the Philippines, to get on stage so we can begin our second session on global supply chain. Let me just invite one last time His Excellency Alfredo E. Pascual, Minister of Trade and Industry for the Philippines. While we wait for the minister to join us on stage, let me start with a bit of good news. By most measures, global supply chains are close to having recovered from the pandemic and also the geopolitical tensions. HSBC wrote in a July report that delivery times are falling, port congestion is close to normal, product shortages are easing, and inventory levels are rebalancing. But there is still room for caution. A lot of these improvements are due to softer global demand overall, which is not a good sign for the global economy. And these scarring effects continue to plague worldwide trade. And the new buzzword these days is deglobalization, or some people call it globalization 2.0. Sorry, I think the minister is now in the room, so let me just invite him on stage. His Excellency Alfredo E. Pascual, Minister of Trade and Industry for the Philippines. Thank you, Minister. Right on time, Minister. So, I would like to just start. We were talking about deglobalization or globalization 2.0. This idea that the pandemic and geopolitical conflicts have led global trade to fragment. Maybe I would like to start with you, Minister. So what is your take on this idea that global trade has basically become segmented? Can we expect further fragmentation of global trade? And also, how will you position Philippines to ensure that it remains competitive in this new era?
You're talking of fragmentation.
Yes, of the global supply chains.
Yeah, the buzzword of deglobalization has led into thinking that there will be a fragmentation. I would think that it will be a mixed reaction by countries and businesses. For certain sectors, the fragmentation is expected, particularly those sectors that involve security, national security, and critical sectors. That there will be movement towards reshoring, nearshoring, and friendshoring. But in certain areas, certain sectors, I think there will be greater integration because businesses will always seek for cost advantages and for efficient operation. So for those types of businesses that will benefit from low-cost production in certain areas, there will be a natural attraction to continue dealing with countries that can provide that low-cost option, as well as more efficient operation. Also, there are sectors, I'm thinking particularly of digital services, where the challenges, supply chain challenges of physical goods will not be present. I would think that we can expect greater integration in such area. In fact, the Philippines is positioning itself very much so in the digital services field. We are already a leading country when it comes to IT BPM services. And given our young workforce, that's about the youngest there is, in our region. I don't know about, probably globally as well, with an average age of 25. In an area where we're dealing with countries north of us, north of ASEAN. Even in ASEAN, we have a relatively younger population than others. We are gearing our young, dynamic, and talented workforce towards more digital skills. So we have a number of reskilling, upskilling programs that we're doing to prepare the country towards being more engaged globally in the digital services. In addition, the country is becoming a favorite location for hyperscale data centers, which are the support infrastructure for digital services. And also the linking of the Philippines via superhighway, superhighway, connecting the Philippines to Japan and the US, and possibly to Europe also by the extension of the cable that's now being laid out between Europe and Japan.
Very interesting to be talking about supply chain, not only in the physical sense, but also in the digital sense. I would like to turn to you, Mr. Nguyen. How is Vietnam taking advantage of being a hub of global supply chain, and where is Vietnam positioning itself to remain competitive?
Okay, first of all, on behalf of Vietnam, may I take this opportunity to thank the friend from Indonesia to successfully organizing this forum. And as a host, this forum, I think that it will be very successful with the full attendance from the member of ASEAN. Referring to your question about how Vietnam take advantages of this global change, yep, I think that the same as the other members in the ASEAN, we have some advantages to attract, to take advantages of the global change. First of all, because we have the very stable politic regime, and with the economic development is very rapid and stable. As far as you may aware that even during the COVID-19, but Vietnam still keeping the positive growth rate around 3%, and last year we had the very high GDP growth rate, more than 8%. It's very attractive for foreign investors, and also we have the very big population with about 100 million people, and in the golden population, with more than 50% of them are in the age of workforce. And also one other thing that can attract to the foreign investors, that we have the very deep integration. We have signed, until now we signed 16 FTAs with more than 60 countries. And so that the consumption market of Vietnam, not just only 100 million people, but also increasing to 60 countries that Vietnam signed FTA. It takes about two-thirds of the consumption market in the world. So with those advantages, now Vietnam is addressed as one of the most attractive to the foreign investors, and we are trying to improve ourselves to make that advantages to be implemented and to join the global change successfully. And for the second question that you mentioned, that is the position of Vietnam in the global change, I think that we are trying to make Vietnam to be one of the more and more important link of the global change. And we think that not only Vietnam, but also other member countries in ASEAN would like to make ASEAN as well to be the very important link of that global change to contribute positively to the development, sustainable development of the region. Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like all the pieces are already in place for Vietnam. I would like to turn to Ms. Lily and come back to this question of globalization 2.0. What is your take on it? And also, what can countries do so that they remain important to the global supply chain and indispensable?
Thank you. They have already, Minister Pascual and DG Nguyen have already discussed the most interesting parts. Now let me discuss the most boring part, the reality. There are two issues in global and investments trade that really are concerning right now. First is that the US-China trade tensions. I don't mean to pretend to know the US economy because I don't know. But what I learned is that regardless Democrat or Republic will be in the White House next term, the US trade policy towards China will remain the same, okay? This escalating trade, technology, security will be escalating. In October 2022, the US launched Semiconductor Review, which aims to hit Chinese semiconductor industries. In retaliation, China issued a review on cybersecurity on Micron company. In July this year, the US just launched a policy review on critical minerals. These tensions will be escalating instead of de-escalating. The second issue is that at the global level, just in 2022, the number of protectionist measures across goods, services, and investments, there were about 2,600 protectionist measures was just introduced last year. And I don't see that it's gonna be taken anyway soon. So those kind of two issues really put us in depressing kind of situations. When we see there's kind of a recovery in supply chains, it was mainly because of the UK blocks have been reviving, as well as reviving in Taiwan and South Korea. But the overall global trade and investments are still very concerning. This brings us to the issues of your questions on decoupling. For ASEAN, we always keep ASEAN's positions as neutrals. Just to give you an illustration, ASEAN's trade with the EU increased from 110 billion US dollar to 342 billion US dollar from 2000 to 2022. So over the last 2 decades, ASEAN's EU trade increased about 3 times, okay? ASEAN-US trade, it increased from 135 billion US dollar to 452 billion US dollar. So it increased more than 3.3 times. So it's much higher than than ASEAN-EU. But then ASEAN-China's trade, it increased from 39 billion US dollar in 2000 to 975 billion US dollar. So it increased 24 times just over the next 2 decades. So asking ASEAN to decoupling or to take side with any other nations will just be impossible. It will not only just decrease ASEAN's trade and investments, it's gonna lower overall ASEAN's economic growth. So what should ASEAN do? First, ASEAN with other middle power countries, first, strengthen multilateral trading systems, ensure dispute settlement body will be functioning by next ministerial trade WTO meeting in 2024. Second, ASEAN is not a self-contained region. Over the last 2 decades, intra-ASEAN trade was only about 22 to 23%. So ASEAN should improve ASEAN and East ASEAN's trade integrations, as well as keep positive engagements and cooperations with ASEAN's trading partners, ASEAN's trade and investments partners. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to go back to Minister Pascual. As we know, with setting trade policies, the challenge is you want to promote trade, but you also want to make sure any investment and trade also benefits the country, as we have seen in Indonesia with its downstreaming efforts. We've heard that Philippines is also interested in following those footsteps. So what can you share with us on those efforts, and especially, can we see a nickel export tax in the near future?
Well, we have seen the experience of Indonesia on how they were able to improve the value added on their nickel ores. Of course, Indonesia is much bigger in terms of nickel reserves compared to the Philippines. So we will have to tailor our approach based on our situation. The way I see it, we can encourage the downstream processing of nickel for companies, for major conglomerates that are already in the nickel mining business. So they have the staying power to shift while the facilities are being built towards processing. They can they're not under pressure to export. Unlike a smaller nickel mining company, which relies heavily on its nickel ore export. So we are banking on a few conglomerates in the Philippines that will be able to move towards nickel processing on their own volition, with no need for either a ban on export, which I don't think we have the market power to be able to make the ban on export work, or imposing an export tax. But we're studying the situation very closely. The important thing is that we will definitely move towards the direction of creating greater value added for our nickel ores. The other important aspect to consider is our move towards electric vehicles, because it will make better sense to go downstream on nickel down to the production of batteries if we will have the electric vehicle manufacturing operation in the Philippines. The Philippines was not able to catch up with internal combustion engine vehicle production. But with electric vehicles, we have all the competencies already in place, okay? Starting, and also the resources needed to produce electric vehicles. Firstly, we have the nickel resources that are critical to the production of batteries, which account for almost half the cost of an electric vehicle. And we have also the other critical minerals that go into electric vehicles, like copper. And we have the expertise in software, given our heavy involvement in IT BPM operation. We have competence in producing electronic products, given that it is our major export from the Philippines, accounting for almost half of our export, are electronic products and semiconductors. So these elements, the green metals, the existing expertise in electronics, the manpower competence in what are required in an electric vehicle, we hope to be able to do a fully integrated production of electric vehicles from nickel ores up to finished electric vehicles. Also, the other components are being developed. There is a iron ore processing, there's a smelter being put up, steel mills are being put up to be able to provide the other inputs to electric vehicles. So that's the strategy that seems to be evolving. And that is, from my perspective, an appropriate approach. We encourage businesses to go into processing of nickel ores because of the incentive, of the profit incentive, not so much ban or penalty. We'll not use the whip. It will be the carrot that will attract them to go downstream production.
Thank you, Minister. Very exciting to see Philippines really make use of its natural resources to develop its manufacturing capabilities. I would like to turn to Vietnam. Vietnam has seen an interesting shift in its relationship with its biggest trading destination, which is the US. From earlier, a few years ago, we had tariffs, but now it's become one of the countries being courted in President Joe Biden's friendshoring. How did you steer Vietnam's investment strategy so that now it becomes a key part of the global value chain, especially when it comes to tech corporations?
Okay, I think it's a very cool question. Yep. Frankly saying, I can say that until now, we address that developing the high technology and green growth is unchanged trend in not only region but also in global. And so that for the economic development, Vietnamese government has direct to prioritize some sector. And we are focusing to develop some prioritizing sector, including the high technology, innovation, digital exchange, circular economy, green economy, and of course to develop the renewable energy, and to take advantages of that friendship by the, like you mentioned about the policy of Joe Biden, or to attract the potential foreign investors into those prioritized sectors. We have done many policy. First of all, we we try to improve continuously the legal framework to encourage to invest into those sectors. For example, we give the special incentive to high technology based on the law on investment and based on the Decree 31 signed by the National Assembly. We are giving the very special incentive to the project in the sector of high technology with the tax only about 10% for 15 years. And not only that, by the decision 29 signed by the Prime Minister of Vietnam 2 years ago, we are giving the very special incentive to some projects which are which have some criteria. First of all is the big scale project. Second is invest in the high technology and have the connection and invite the Vietnamese enterprises into the value chains. And so that if the project can meet the criteria based on the decision 29, the project can get the very special incentive with the CIT corporate income tax, just only 5% for maximum 37 years. And I think that with that special incentive policy, it very competitive in the region. So that I believe that with that special policy, we can attract the potential investor in those prioritized sector. And some more policy that we are supporting, that Vietnamese government is trying to be signed with the foreign investors. We always receive the issue from foreign investors, and we work very tightly with the local government and relevant ministry to show that issue as soon as possible. The Prime Minister also create the steering committee to show the issue of the foreign investment project. And the lead of that committee is the Deputy Prime Minister. So it means that the government always beside with the foreign investors, and it can make the foreign investor to be more believe in the policy from the government. And one more thing that I would like to share with you, that beside the policy to develop the high technology, we also want to develop the ecosystem of innovation. In Vietnam, the Prime Minister had assigned to organize the NIC, National Innovation Center, belong to our military. And we have the very ambitious plan to make that NIC to be the regional hub of innovation in the ASEAN. And now we have the cooperation with Singapore, for example, to have the bridge to exchange the information, to exchange the knowledge, and to support the the enterprises in terms of innovation or high technology. And if you invest into NIC, you can get a very special incentive. And now we are attracting many big corporations, not from US, EU, Japan, Korea, to make NIC to be a hub of innovation development. And actually, until now, we are receiving many delegation enterprises from many countries like US or EU, especially from Taiwan. Yeah, they are very interested in about the opportunity to invest into high technology, and that's why I see that we are taking advantages of developing high technology and attracting foreign investors. And your second point is what? What?
Oh, so my second point was, how did you actually steer Vietnam's investment strategy to successfully become a key part of the value chain despite all the geopolitical challenges?
Yep, I mentioned that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It was really interesting you mentioned the economy of innovation, and Minister Pascual spoke about the digital value chain, digital supply chain. I would like to turn to Ms. Lily. You have done a lot of research on this nascent field of AI. Do you have any advice for countries in Southeast Asia how they can make sure they can benefit from this technology and not actually be hurt by it?
That's interesting questions. Let me give you an illustrations. Telephone took 75 years for telephone to get 100 million users. But it took only 2 months for ChatGPT to get 100 million users. And now ChatGPT has 1.8 billion people around the globe every month as their visitors. That's how fast and how massive digital technology and AI these days. And ASEAN, we are not in the free privilege to choose whether we want to have it or not. So how we embrace the developments of digital technology and AI to provide benefits for our people. First is that we facilitate firms and individuals to optimize the use of digital technology and AI, because they can be used as first, increase the accuracy of supply and demand forecasts. So we're gonna optimize the inventory levels. We can also use for increasing the traceability, increasing the accuracy in traceability. And the third, it can also help us for risk assessments. But the thing is that it can also bring some of negative consequences. That's some things that the government and private sector should be ready to get involved. Some of the main issues in digital and AI is that competitions, data, cybersecurity. So governments should provide conducive environments as well as manage to regulate at least on those 3 issues on data governance, cybersecurity, and competitions, particularly to ensure small and medium enterprises are not pushed away by large firms who can have access to large big data. The second thing is, the last thing is that government as well as private sectors should work together. I want to echoing Minister Pascual and DG Nguyen in investing in digital and physical infrastructure. Because if we only focus on digital itself, the delivery, the output, it still be relying on the physical infrastructures, right? And the last but the most important one is that we need to work together to allocate enough resources and human capital to manage. I don't mean to promote area work. We are currently working on ASEAN's Digital Community 2045 because we want to make sure that digital transformations should be based or should cover on the 3 pillars in ASEAN. That's security and politics, economics, as well as socio-cultural. So I think we should work together to ensure digital transformations covering all those three main pillars, and we work on those key elements on data governance, increase value added, provide conducive environments, and the last one is to ensure digital inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lily. I would like to just close this panel by asking each of our panelists to share with us in one sentence. We've heard from Pa Arshad Rashid talking about this idea of intra-ASEAN connectivity. That is even more important given the fragmentation in the global supply chain. So maybe we'll start with Minister Pascual. Can you share with us how will Philippines also ensure the strength of the intra-ASEAN supply chain?
So ASEAN is a region with a large, very large population. So if we really exert effort to integrate and complement each other, we have a big internal market in the region. And in an era of assuming the globalization, we can survive as a region in ASEAN. Of course, now we see we have a healthy relationship with China and the US as a region, but assuming there will be further fragmentation, we should be ready on our own as a large region to be self-contained, self-sustaining.
Thank you. How about for Vietnam?
Well, I'm so impressed with the presentation of Mr. Minister from the Ministry of Investment of Indonesia when you tell about the solidarity of the ASEAN. And I think that until now, ASEAN is one, and we try to be one, because in the Vietnamese sentence we have a sentence like this: with one tree, you cannot build even a hill, but with three trees, you can build a forest. So you can build a forest and the mountain. That means that solidarity is the most important for a reason. So I think that I believe ASEAN will continuously develop as one. And as a member, like Vietnam, we will contribute to the mutual benefit, mutual development sustainably of the region. And we hope and we see that the attendance of this forum prove that ASEAN is one, and we keep that, and we try to develop that to make ASEAN to be more important role in the value chains, and it's what idea.
And Ms. Lily?
Thank you. Let me borrow brain from Minister Bahlil and provide you the facts. Over the last 2 decades, from 2000 to 2022, intra-ASEAN trade was only about 22 to 23%. Intra-ASEAN investments, direct investments inflows was only increased from 6.8% to 7.3% over the last 2 decades. With this kind of conditions, ASEAN, let me emphasize what Minister Bahlil mentions, we should not compete each other, because unfair competitions will not gonna solve our problem. But we should work together to invite investments, to increase trade from first East ASEAN regions as well as from ASEAN trading partners, because ASEAN is not a self-contained region. Our products are not complementary. Most of our products our products are substitutes. So we are very naturally competing to one another. One way is that we should work together, and then we rely a lot more on investments and technology on Japan, South Korea, and now China. So we should work together as a region, and then inviting trade and investments from our partners, as well as from outside ASEAN's East Asian regions. Now we have the RCEPs. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to optimize the existing free trade agreements, regional comprehensive economic partnerships, and then we always try to engage positive partnerships and cooperations with our trade and investments partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let us give the panelists another round of applause. Let us all work together for better ASEAN connectivity in our supply chains. Thank you so much.
Once again, let's give a big round of applause for this second panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for Ms. Judith Ho.
Yes, for leading the second session. And for now, would like to give a token of appreciation to all of the panelists and moderator. And once again, would like to invite Mr. Iqmal Lukman from the Investment Ministry of Indonesia to deliver the mementos to all the panelists and moderator.
We once again thank you, His Excellency Alfredo E. Pascual, Secretary of Department of Trade and Industry of the Republic of the Philippines, Mr. Nguyen An Thuan, Deputy Director General of the Foreign Investment Agency, Ministry of Planning and Investment of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, and last but not least, Dr. Lily Yan Eng, Lead Advisor, Southeast Asia Region at the Economic Q Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, or AREA.
Yes, and once again, Pak Bahlil would like to also use this opportunity for a photo session together with you and all the panelists and moderator. Let's do it. In 3, 2, 1.
All right, so thank you very much for all the panelists.
Let's give a big round of applause for this second session. Very fruitful and a lot of takeaways that were talked about during the session.
One of the most important key takeaways that we got today from the second panel discussion was that ASEAN plays a pivotal role in the global supply chain. And I also remember what Mr. Ashad Rashid, the chairman of ABAC, once said to an interview to Al Jazeera. Sir, you mentioned that the new China is ASEAN, which is very true, while saying that ASEAN is a promising destination for investment in value-added manufacturing and that the region is also widely open to work together with China.
That's right, and ASEAN is also very rich in key minerals such as nickel, copper, abundant source of renewable energy, food and agriculture, and we have to use this to focus on the downstream industry to make it stronger in internal ASEAN. And Indonesia contributes about 40% of the nickel to the world, and if you add the Philippines, it becomes 50 to 60%.
And it's really interesting to note as well that we are all eyeing on the plan of ASEAN supply chain, where we aim for ASEAN Connectivity 2025 towards achieving a seamless and competitive ASEAN, and this must be done through several strategic steps, from lowering supply chain costs to improving supply chain speed and reliability across the region.
And also after the lunch break, we're going to continue the panel discussion with 3 interesting topics, which will be touching on renewable energy, electric vehicles, and health systems. So we do hope that everyone will be attending after the lunch break.
That's right, and the lunch break will start very soon, and you are expected, ladies and gentlemen, to please return to this ballroom by 1:15 p.m.
Yes.
Once again, by 1:15 p.m., our second half of the day will start, so make sure